What if everything you've been told about the purpose of life was wrong? What if success, money, and even love, the very things you've been chasing, were never meant to satisfy the emptiness inside you? Imagine reaching the top of the mountain, holding everything you thought would bring happiness, only to feel more hollow than ever before. This truth has shocked kings, haunted geniuses, and broken the hearts of the rich and famous. And yet, more than 500 years ago, there was an answer, hidden in plain sight, that could free us from the endless cycle of craving and disappointment. Are you ready to uncover it? If this message touches you, don't forget to subscribe to Buddhism in every moment so we can continue creating meaningful videos that inspire and heal. Your support keeps this journey alive. Part 1. The question that echoes through every soul. There are moments in life when silence becomes louder than any noise. You may be sitting in a crowded cafe in New York, the hum of conversation swirling around you, yet inside there is a question echoing so loudly it drowns out everything else. Why am I alive? You may be lying in bed after a long day of work in Los Angeles, scrolling endlessly through your phone, yet deep down you feel a gnawing emptiness, a whisper asking, "Is this all there is?" Perhaps you've stood on a mountain in Colorado, the vastness of the sky stretching endlessly above you, and in the face of such beauty you felt small, fragile, and unmoored, haunted by the same question: what is the real purpose of life? It is a question that refuses to be silenced. We can bury it under achievements, bury it under pleasures, bury it under the busyness of our schedules, but it always finds a way back. It comes when the house grows quiet after the children are asleep. It comes when the celebration ends and you are left with the echo of your own laughter. It comes when you reach the very thing you thought would make you whole, only to find a deeper hunger gnawing within. This question does not discriminate. It has visited kings in palaces, poets in their solitude, scientists at the edge of discovery, and ordinary people in the stillness of their daily lives. It is as old as humanity itself, and it shakes the very foundations of our existence. We were raised to believe that the answers are simple: success, love, comfort, security. From childhood we were told, study hard, get a good job, find a partner, buy a house, enjoy your vacations, raise a family, retire well. Beneath it all, the silent promise is that if we follow this path, happiness will come, and with it, meaning. And yet, how many people have checked every box only to find themselves awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, aching with a nameless sorrow? Think of the lives we admire from afar, the movie stars with red carpets laid out before them, the billionaires whose names are whispered with envy, the athletes who have broken every record, who stand on podiums while the world applauds. We imagine that if we had their lives, we would finally feel complete. And yet, time and again, when we hear their stories, what do we find? Loneliness, regret, anxiety, addiction, a sense that even at the top they are looking for something more. This is the paradox that unsettles us. If those who have everything we dream of are still searching, then what are we chasing? What kind of cruel trick is life playing on us? To run so hard, to sacrifice so much, only to arrive at emptiness. This is why the question echoes. It is not simply curiosity. It is a wound. It is the voice of our soul crying out that something has been missed. And so we find ourselves standing on a threshold. On one side is the life we were told to live, the endless pursuit of more money, more recognition, more moments of pleasure. On the other side lies a mystery we cannot quite name, but which calls to us in the quiet. This threshold is both terrifying and exhilarating, because to step across it is to admit that perhaps we have been looking in the wrong direction all along. The truth is, life has a way of cornering us into reflection. The promotion that does not bring peace, the relationship that cannot erase loneliness, the dream vacation that feels strangely hollow. These experiences accumulate, each one a small fracture in the story we were told. And at some point, if we are honest, we must stop and ask, if happiness is not the ultimate purpose of life, then what is? It is not an easy question to face. Most of us would rather keep running than risk the discomfort of standing still. We drown the silence with distractions, streaming shows late into the night, scrolling through endless feeds of smiling faces, filling our calendars so full that there is no room left for thought. But in rare moments when the noise fades, the question rises again. What is all of this for? Imagine being at a crossroads in the middle of the desert in Arizona. The road behind you stretches long and straight, marked with all the choices you have made. The road ahead disappears into the horizon, unknown and uncertain. And there, standing in the stillness, you hear the whisper, "Have I been walking toward the wrong destination?" That is what this question feels like. It is both unsettling and liberating. Unsettling, because it reveals the fragility of our assumptions. Liberating, because it hints at a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered. This is the moment of awakening that has visited countless souls before us. From ancient monks in the caves of India to modern seekers in the skyscrapers of Chicago, this question is the same. It asks us to look beneath the surface of life, to peel back the layers of habit and expectation, and to glimpse something timeless. And once the question has been asked, it cannot be unasked. It will follow you gently but persistently until you begin to search for an answer that satisfies not just the mind, but the very core of your being. The purpose of life is not an answer handed down in a neat sentence. It is something that must be lived, something that reveals itself in the unfolding of our days. But to even begin, we must have the courage to listen to the question, to sit with it, to let it pierce through the illusions we hold, and then little by little to follow where it leads. For in that search lies the possibility of freedom, the possibility of peace, the possibility of discovering a purpose that is not fragile, not fleeting, but enduring. There is a hidden irony in the way we live. From the moment we can walk and talk, we are encouraged to move toward achievement, as though life itself were a ladder we must climb rung by rung. We are praised for the medals, for the degrees, for the promotions, for the acquisitions. But no one tells us that the ladder has no end. No one warns us that with every rung we climb, another appears just above our head, demanding more strength, more sacrifice, more of our time. And so we climb. We climb through our youth, through our prime, through the years when our children are small, through the years when our bodies begin to ache, and still we climb. Until one day, we look down and realize that the climb has taken everything and given little in return. What once promised meaning has become another burden we carry. I once met a man in Boston who had everything a person could want on paper: a home by the water, a successful career, a family that adored him. And yet, as he confessed quietly over coffee, he felt as though his life were hollow. "It looks perfect from the outside," he said, "but inside I feel like I'm living someone else's story." His words carried a truth so many of us hide. We wear smiles, we post pictures, we show the world our curated lives, and all the while something deeper aches within us. That ache is not weakness. It is not failure. It is a signal, a quiet alarm ringing in the soul, telling us that we have mistaken the map for the destination. Perhaps you have felt it too. The strange letdown after a party ends. The emptiness in the silence of a hotel room, even though the bed is luxurious and the view is breathtaking. The way joy slips through your fingers like water when you try to hold it too tightly. These are not accidents. They are clues. Clues that the life we were promised is not enough. Clues that whisper, maybe the story of success and happiness is incomplete. The ancients understood this better than we give them credit for. Long before billboards and Instagram, long before corporate slogans promised fulfillment, people sat beneath the stars and asked themselves the same haunting questions. They watched loved ones grow old, watched crops fail, watched fortunes vanish, and they realized that life could not be reduced to pleasure or possession. The deeper purpose was something else, something quieter, something that could not be purchased or performed but only discovered within. And yet, here we are, thousands of years later, still running in circles, still convincing ourselves that the next achievement, the next purchase, the next relationship will finally give us peace. We keep chasing, not because we are foolish, but because we are human. We are wired to seek, to desire, to move toward what we think will soothe our pain. But what if we are running in the wrong direction? What if the peace we crave is not ahead of us, but already within us, waiting for us to stop long enough to notice? The weight of this realization can be startling. It can feel like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing the road you've traveled has been leading you nowhere. But it is also the beginning of something extraordinary. For when illusions crumble, truth has space to appear. When the noise quiets, the whisper of a deeper purpose can finally be heard. I want you to remember a time when you were completely still, perhaps sitting on a porch watching the rain fall, or lying on the grass looking at the night sky. In those moments, did you not feel a strange blend of smallness and connection? A sense that you were both a fragile being and part of something infinite? That feeling is not random. It is the glimpse of a reality far greater than our daily struggles. It is life itself reaching through the veil of busyness to remind us that meaning is not found in the chase, but in the pause. What makes this truth difficult is that it cannot be proven in the way a scientific formula can be proven. It must be tasted. It must be lived. And so, most of us ignore it until life forces us to confront it. Illness, loss, disappointment, these are the cracks through which light enters. When everything we relied upon begins to fall apart, when our trophies rust and our titles lose their meaning, we are brought face to face with the raw question: if none of this lasts, what does? The question is not meant to destroy us. It is meant to free us. To free us from illusions, from chasing shadows, from spending our brief years running after what cannot satisfy. To face this question is to begin the real journey, the journey inward. It is to stand at the threshold of discovery and say, maybe I do not know what life is for, but I am ready to find out. That readiness is the seed of awakening. And this is where the story takes its turn. For history shows us again and again that when human beings dare to look beyond the obvious answers, they stumble upon truths that transform not only their own lives but the lives of countless others. When a poet asks what lies beyond words, when a scientist asks what lies beyond formulas, when a seeker asks what lies beyond happiness, they are all in their own ways stepping into the same river, the river that flows toward meaning. This is not about abandoning life or rejecting its joys. It is about reorienting the heart. It is about learning to hold joy without clinging, to hold sorrow without despair, to hold success without arrogance, and to hold failure without collapse. It is about finding the center that does not move, the silence that remains steady even when storms rage. That is where purpose lies, not in the endless pursuit of something more, but in the deep recognition of what already is. As you hear these words, notice what stirs inside you. Perhaps there is resistance, an inner voice saying, "This sounds too abstract, I just want to be happy." Perhaps there is longing, an inner voice whispering, "Yes, I know there must be something more." Both are natural. Both are signs that you are alive to the question. Do not rush to silence them. Let them both be present, for they are companions on the path. The question that echoes through every soul is not a question to be answered in a single night. It is a question to be lived. And the way you live it will determine the quality of your days, the strength of your spirit, the depth of your love. You may not have chosen to hear it, but now that you do, you are invited into a journey far greater than the one you were promised. You are invited into the discovery of life's real purpose. There comes a time in nearly every person's life when the applause fades, the workday ends, the screens go dark, and they are left alone with their thoughts. It is in those quiet, unguarded moments that the heart asks what it has been trying to avoid. What is the real purpose of life? This is not a question reserved for philosophers or saints. It visits construction workers on their lunch breaks, parents rocking children to sleep, artists staring at unfinished canvases, and strangers passing each other on subway platforms. It visits those who live in luxury penthouses overlooking Central Park, and those who work 2 jobs to survive in small towns scattered across America. It visits everyone because no matter how different our lives look on the outside, inside we all face the same mystery. You may remember a time when you achieved something you believed would change everything. A graduation, a long-awaited promotion, a dream vacation, a wedding day. For a moment, joy burned bright. But then, as the days passed, something unexpected happened. The joy softened, the excitement faded, and ordinary life returned with its familiar rhythm of worries and desires. What you thought would complete you left you still searching. It is in moments like these that the truth quietly slips through. Happiness is not the final destination, and achievements, however glittering, cannot fill the spaces of the soul. This is why the question feels so haunting. It is not just a curiosity about existence. It is an ache for something that all of our striving has not given us. We were taught to run after happiness, to gather possessions, to build reputations, to find love as though it were a prize that would end the search. Yet, how many times must we touch what we thought was the answer only to realize it dissolves in our hands? How many times must we taste the sweetness of success only to be left hungrier than before? Life in the modern world does not make this easier. In fact, it makes the ache sharper. We scroll through endless feeds of curated happiness, smiling faces, sunsets in exotic places, meals that look perfect, couples holding hands, families gathered in laughter. The illusion is powerful. Everyone else seems to be living the life we wish we had. But behind each carefully chosen photo, there are stories of disappointment, loneliness, doubt, and longing. We see the polished surface and compare it to our unfiltered struggles, and the result is a deep, quiet sense that we are falling short. The world tells us to be happy, but the harder we chase it, the further it seems to run. And yet, this is not a new problem. History is filled with examples of people who had everything the world admires but still confessed to emptiness. From emperors of Rome to modern-day celebrities, the pattern is the same. Fame, fortune, brilliance, all of it shines brightly but cannot quiet the restlessness of the heart. Even the most accomplished figures in science, art, and innovation admitted, often in their final moments, that they were left unsatisfied. It is as though life itself keeps pointing us toward the same conclusion. Meaning is not found where we have been taught to look. Imagine standing at the edge of the Pacific Ocean, waves crashing endlessly, stretching far beyond what the eye can see. You could spend your life collecting shells along the shore, each one unique and beautiful. But if you never lift your eyes to the horizon, you will miss the vast ocean waiting beyond. That is how life feels when we confuse temporary pleasures with ultimate purpose. We gather shells, possessions, achievements, relationships, believing they will make us whole. But the question that echoes through the soul is urging us to look up, to realize that the real journey is not about the shells but about the sea. The reason this question is so unsettling is because it demands honesty. It asks us to admit that maybe, just maybe, we have been living someone else's story, that perhaps we have followed a script handed down by parents, teachers, society, without ever pausing to ask if it is truly ours. The houses, the careers, the vacations, were these really our deepest longings, or were they expectations we accepted because they were safer than facing the unknown? To confront this is to risk everything we thought we knew, but it is also the first step toward freedom. For when the illusions break, a strange clarity arises. You begin to see that the ladder you have been climbing may never end, and that perhaps the goal was never to reach the top, but to step off the ladder altogether. You begin to sense that happiness, as it is usually defined, is not a destination but a fleeting guest that visits and leaves. And you begin to wonder if there is something deeper, something steady, that can carry you through not just the joyful moments but the storms as well. I once heard someone describe it this way: life is like chasing the horizon. You run and run, convinced that if you reach it you will finally be at peace. But no matter how far you go, the horizon always moves further away. At some point, you must realize that the peace you seek is not waiting in the distance. It must be found in the very step you are taking now. This realization is both shocking and liberating. Shocking, because it turns everything we were taught upside down. Liberating, because it means peace is not out of reach, it is closer than we ever imagined. This is why the question is so important. It breaks us open. It shakes us awake. It refuses to let us live on autopilot, endlessly chasing without ever arriving. It forces us to confront the truth that the things we thought would save us cannot, and in doing so, it invites us to search for what truly can. That search may feel daunting, but it is the only one worth taking, for it leads us not to fleeting happiness but to something lasting, something unshakable, something real. The first step is simply to listen, to allow the question to echo even if it scares us, to stop silencing it with distractions, to stop covering it with noise. To sit quietly, perhaps in the early morning when the world is still asleep, and hear the whisper, "Why am I alive? What is the real purpose of this fragile, beautiful, fleeting life?" If you can sit with that question without rushing to answer, you have already begun the journey. Because the journey does not start with certainty, it starts with honesty, and honesty will lead you into places you may have avoided. It will ask you to acknowledge the emptiness that lingers after achievement, the loneliness that follows even in the presence of others, the longing that no amount of pleasure has ever erased. It will ask you to admit that, despite appearances, you are still searching. This admission is not defeat, it is courage. For only when we admit we are lost can we begin to find the way. The way forward may not look like what you expected. It may not be about adding more to your life, but about letting go. It may not be about chasing happiness, but about facing suffering. It may not be about finding the perfect answer, but about learning to live with wisdom and compassion in a world that is always changing. The question that echoes is not there to torment you. It is there to guide you. It is the doorway to a life of depth and freedom. The beauty of the question lies in its simplicity. The truth we are searching for is not some hidden secret buried in far-off temples or ancient scriptures. It is here within us in the very question itself. That is why it haunts us. It forces us to confront the greatest mystery of all, our own existence. Why are we alive? What are we truly here for? These are not theoretical questions. They are questions for the heart, questions that demand not intellectual answers but visceral lived truths. And the more we avoid them, the more they insist on being heard. So many people spend their lives chasing the next thing. The next big job, the next relationship, the next vacation, the next moment of happiness. And when they reach each goal, they stand there for a moment, expecting something to change, to feel different. But it doesn't. The moment passes, and with it, that initial thrill. Slowly but surely, the satisfaction fades and the same question creeps back in. Is this all there is? But here is the remarkable thing. The question is not something to fear. It is not something to silence or ignore. It is a signal, an invitation. It is calling you to stop the chase, to pause, to breathe, and to recognize something fundamental about life. That it is not about accumulating more, but about shedding what doesn't serve you. It is about discovering what already exists within you, not finding it somewhere outside. You do not need to keep climbing. You do not need to keep gathering. You need only to stop and let the layers fall away one by one. It is the gift of being alive that allows us to ask the question. So many people move through life as though they are simply following a script: go to school, get a job, get married, have kids, retire, and they never stop to question whether any of this truly brings them closer to the heart of their existence. But the moment you ask, "Why am I alive?" you are already on the path to something far greater than success, far greater than pleasure, far greater than happiness as it is commonly understood. This is the journey of self-discovery that has been walked by sages, wanderers, and ordinary people who have dared to ask. It is the path of understanding the true purpose of life, and it begins not with a grand revelation but with a simple acceptance. I do not know. The moment you let go of the need to have all the answers is the moment you begin to find peace. It is the moment when the real journey can begin. But even as we seek peace, we are faced with the reality that the world we live in is far from peaceful. It is a world filled with noise, distraction, and constant demands on our time. The moment we stop to think, to ask the deep questions, we are bombarded with messages telling us that we are not doing enough, not achieving enough, not having enough fun. These external pressures create a storm within us, a storm that makes it difficult to hear the still, small voice of truth. In those moments, it is easy to give in to the noise. It is easy to tell ourselves that we must push forward, that we must chase more, that we must be more in order to feel worthy. But in doing so, we miss the one thing that could truly bring peace, the ability to sit quietly with the question and let it reveal its answer over time. The search is not something to finish. It is something to live, moment by moment. And as we live it, we begin to see that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to remain centered amid it. In the midst of all this, there is also joy. Not the fleeting joy that comes from accomplishment or acquisition, but the deep joy that arises when we stop running, stop trying to fix things, and simply be with life as it is. This joy is not something we can grab and hold, but something that arises naturally when we cease the struggle. It is a joy that is grounded in acceptance, in awareness, and in love. It is the joy of knowing that, in the end, we do not need to arrive anywhere. We are already here, fully alive. In this way, the search for meaning, the search for purpose, becomes an ongoing dance with life itself. We learn to accept the ebb and flow of experiences, the rise and fall of emotions, and the constant change that surrounds us. It is through this acceptance that we begin to find the stability we seek. And as we find it, we start to see that the question was never something to fear, but something to guide us. It was never an obstacle to happiness, but the key to a deeper and more enduring peace. What if the answer we seek is not somewhere out there, in a distant future or a far-off place, but here, in the present moment? What if the secret to life's meaning lies not in doing more, but in being more, being present, being aware, being open to what is? This is the path that has been shown to us for thousands of years. It is the path of mindfulness, the path of the heart, the path of awareness. And it is a path that is available to all of us right now, right where we are. The search for the real purpose of life is not a linear journey. It is not a straight road with clear signs along the way. It is a winding path, full of detours, obstacles, and moments of doubt. But it is also a path of profound discovery. The more we walk it, the more we come to understand that life's purpose is not something we can grasp or define. It is something we live, something we experience, something we embody with every breath we take. And this journey is not one we take alone. Every person who has asked the question, who has sought meaning, has walked this path in their own way. The stories may differ, but the truth remains the same. Life's purpose is not something outside of us. It is something we uncover within ourselves, moment by moment, step by step. So if you are listening to these words, know that you are not alone. The question that haunts you has haunted countless others before you, and just as they found their way, so too will you. But it begins with the willingness to ask, the courage to sit with the question, and the openness to let it reveal its truth. Part 2. The Modern Myth of Happiness. In today's world, we are taught from an early age that the purpose of life is to seek happiness, but not just any happiness, specifically the happiness that comes from success. We live in a society that equates achievement with joy, and we are constantly encouraged to strive for more. More wealth, more status, more accolades, more pleasure, more happiness. The narrative is simple: if we check enough boxes, graduate from school, land the perfect job, buy a house, get married, have children, retire comfortably, we will finally feel fulfilled. We are told that once we reach the top, everything will fall into place. We will be happy. At least, that's the dream we've been sold. And yet, how many people, after achieving all of this, still feel empty inside? Take New York City, for instance. Known for its bright lights, towering skyscrapers, and fast-paced energy, it is a place where dreams are made. It's the city where millions come to build careers, make a name for themselves, and live the so-called American dream. Yet, despite the excitement and success surrounding them, many people in New York report feeling profoundly lonely. The city that never sleeps is also a city where you can feel isolated, invisible, surrounded by millions yet still unable to shake the deep ache of loneliness. In Los Angeles, the story is no different. The city of stars, fame, and luxury is also a place where countless individuals, despite their fame or fortune, wrestle with depression and emptiness. The glitz and glamour of Hollywood seem to hide a darker truth, that success, as the world defines it, does not guarantee happiness. This is the paradox of modern life. We have been taught that success equals happiness, but the more we chase success, the more elusive happiness becomes. It is as if we are running on a treadmill, constantly moving but never getting anywhere. The more we achieve, the higher the bar is set, and the more we yearn for what we don't have. The endless pursuit of happiness leaves us perpetually dissatisfied, never quite reaching the contentment we are promised. This is what psychologists refer to as the happiness paradox. Studies have shown that the more people value happiness as a goal, the less happy they tend to be. The desire to be happy, constantly striving for more, actually leads to greater dissatisfaction. It's as if the mere act of wanting happiness makes it slip further away. We push ourselves to attain it, but in doing so, we set ourselves up for failure. When we place happiness on a pedestal as the ultimate goal, we overlook the truth. Happiness is a byproduct of living authentically, not something that can be chased or grasped. Think about the times you've worked tirelessly towards something you thought would make you happy, only to find that the moment you achieved it, the happiness was fleeting. Perhaps it was a holiday, a birthday, or a special event you spent weeks planning. You thought that everything would fall into place, that this would be the moment of ultimate joy. And yet, when the day arrived, it didn't quite meet your expectations. Maybe the food was not as delicious as you imagined, or the people didn't show up on time. Maybe the perfect photo didn't capture the feeling you were hoping for, and by the end of the day, instead of feeling elated, you felt drained and unsatisfied. That is the nature of happiness when it is seen as a goal rather than a natural outcome of a life well lived. There is a deeper truth hidden in this. We've been conditioned to believe that happiness must look a certain way. It must be big, loud, and unmistakable, like the success stories we see on social media or hear about in the media. We compare ourselves to those stories, believing that if we just work harder, we too will experience that kind of joy. But what if the kind of happiness that is truly fulfilling is much quieter? What if it is found in moments of stillness, in the simple things, and in the acceptance of life as it is, rather than how we want it to be? To see this truth more clearly, I invite you to try something radical, a digital detox. For one day, step away from the constant barrage of social media, emails, and news. Turn off your phone, or at the very least, put it away for a few hours. Disconnect from the world that is constantly telling you that you need more, that you need to be more, that you need to look more like the people you follow on Instagram. Allow yourself to experience the world without the filter of comparison. See what happens when you stop chasing the happiness that is promised to you by others, and instead, simply be present with your life. You might be surprised at how much peace and joy arise in those quiet moments. During this digital detox, notice how much of your happiness is tied to external validation. How much of your mood shifts based on what you see on your phone, on TV, or in the lives of those around you. How much of your happiness is dependent on achievements, approval, or material things. What would happen if you disconnected from that noise and simply allowed yourself to experience the fullness of the present moment without judgment? The truth is, when we step away from the constant noise of the digital world, we begin to hear our own hearts more clearly. We begin to realize that we are enough as we are, that happiness does not need to come from external sources. It can arise naturally from within, when we stop striving so hard for it. This doesn't mean we stop working toward our goals or achieving things in life. It simply means that we stop relying on those things to define our worth or our happiness. We have been led to believe that happiness is something to be found, like a treasure hidden somewhere just out of reach. But in reality, it is not something to be sought. It is something that arises naturally when we live authentically, when we stop chasing after fleeting moments of pleasure, and when we begin to appreciate the beauty and contentment that already exist within us. The myth of happiness, the idea that it is something to be achieved or attained, keeps us trapped in a cycle of longing and frustration. But when we realize that happiness is not a destination, but a way of being, we are free. We are free to let go of the pressure to constantly perform, to constantly strive for more, and instead we can simply be. In that space of being, we find true peace and true happiness. So, the next time you feel yourself caught in the cycle of comparison, the next time you feel that familiar ache of longing for something you don't have, ask yourself, what if I am already enough? What if happiness is not something I need to chase, but something I can allow to arise naturally within me? What if, instead of looking outside myself for validation, I looked within and found the peace I've been searching for all along? Part 3. When success feels empty. It's easy to believe that success will bring us the peace and fulfillment we crave. After all, we are told from a young age that success is the key to happiness. The more we achieve, the more we have, the more we do, the more we should feel complete. But what happens when we reach the pinnacle, only to realize that success is not the answer? What happens when the very things we thought would fill us only leave us feeling emptier? History is full of stories of individuals who, despite achieving remarkable things, were left with a sense of profound dissatisfaction. Take, for example, Sir Isaac Newton, one of the most brilliant minds to ever exist. He revolutionized the way we understand the universe, formulating the laws of motion and gravity, laying the foundation for classical mechanics. But towards the end of his life, Newton, who had been celebrated as a genius, famously compared himself to a child playing by the shore, gathering a few shells while the vast ocean of truth lay undiscovered before him. Despite his monumental achievements, Newton felt a deep emptiness. The more he learned, the more he realized how little he truly knew, and in that realization he came face to face with the incompleteness of worldly success. Leonardo da Vinci, widely regarded as one of the most gifted individuals in history, also felt the sting of unfulfilled potential. At the end of his life, despite creating masterpieces like the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, he was filled with regret. On his deathbed, he expressed that he had offended God and mankind because he felt his work had not reached the level it should have. Even someone who had mastered the realms of art, science, and engineering found himself unsatisfied, haunted by the belief that he had not done enough. In the end, his genius did not protect him from the same emptiness that plagues us all. Consider Steve Jobs, a man who changed the world in ways few others could claim. As the co-founder of Apple, Jobs revolutionized personal computing, telecommunications, and entertainment. He amassed wealth beyond imagination and earned global adoration. Yet, in the final stages of his life, battling cancer, Jobs experienced a profound sense of regret. He admitted that he had neglected his family and relationships in his pursuit of success, wishing he had spent more time with the people who truly mattered to him. His wealth, his fame, and his achievements, none of it brought him the peace he had once hoped for. He died with regrets about the things he had sacrificed, realizing that in the end, success had not healed the internal void. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, seemed to have it all. He broke records, filled arenas, and earned adoration from millions of fans worldwide. Yet, despite his fame and fortune, Jackson struggled with a deep sense of dissatisfaction and loneliness. He was famously quoted as saying, "I'm never pleased with anything." His pursuit of perfection in his art, while admirable, left him constantly searching for the next project that would finally make him feel complete. Despite his success, Jackson's internal battles, his fears, insecurities, and loneliness, were never truly healed by the external recognition he received. The more he achieved, the more he yearned for something beyond the applause. These examples, though extraordinary, are not isolated. They reveal a universal truth. External success does not guarantee internal fulfillment. We all think that if we just reach the next milestone, if we just get the recognition we deserve, we will finally feel whole. But as these stories show, no amount of external achievement can fill the void inside us. The emptiness we feel is not the result of not achieving enough, but rather the result of chasing after something that is inherently empty. The illusion that success and happiness are synonymous. In the modern world, this myth is more pervasive than ever. We see it play out in the lives of CEOs and celebrities, athletes and artists, entrepreneurs and influencers. They climb the ladder of success, one rung after another, and yet many of them find themselves just as empty as when they started. Take the case of a successful CEO who, despite running a multi-million-dollar company, struggles with depression. On the outside, he is the picture of success. He drives a luxury car, lives in a penthouse, and has everything money can buy. But behind closed doors, he feels alone, anxious, and disconnected from his true self. His achievements, which were supposed to bring him fulfillment, have only deepened his sense of isolation. Similarly, many top artists, musicians, actors, painters, achieve fame and recognition, only to find themselves battling loneliness and substance abuse. They are surrounded by people, yet they feel invisible. Their art, once a source of joy, has become a heavy burden. They chase the next hit, the next performance, the next project, hoping it will bring them the fulfillment they seek. But with every success, they are left with the same emptiness, the same gnawing feeling that something is missing. This is the heart of the problem with the pursuit of success as a means to happiness. It is a never-ending chase. Success, in and of itself, cannot provide the lasting peace and fulfillment we seek. The more we try to fill the emptiness with external achievements, the deeper the emptiness seems to become. Like a bucket with a hole in the bottom, no amount of success will ever be enough to fill it. The problem lies not in the pursuit of success itself, but in the belief that success is the answer to our deepest questions. So, what do we do with this realization? How do we find fulfillment if it's not through external success? The first step is to acknowledge the truth. The external world cannot solve our internal emptiness. We must begin to look within. We must ask ourselves not, what can I achieve? But, who am I beyond what I do? This leads to a powerful exercise, one that can help us confront the heart of the issue, personal reflection. Take a moment to think about the things in your life that you are most proud of, your accomplishments, your relationships, your successes. Write them down. Then, ask yourself the following question. If I lost this tomorrow, would I still feel whole? The answers may be uncomfortable. You may realize that you've attached your sense of self-worth to things that are temporary, things that can be lost in an instant. But this realization is the beginning of true transformation. By confronting the things that we rely on for validation, we can begin to loosen our attachment to them. We can begin to cultivate a sense of self-worth that is not tied to external accomplishments, but to our inherent worth as human beings. This exercise is not about dismissing success or achievements. It is about recognizing that our true value lies not in what we do, but in who we are. When we stop looking for fulfillment in external sources, we can begin to cultivate an inner peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. This is the first step in breaking free from the myth of success and discovering a deeper, more lasting form of happiness. Success may bring temporary satisfaction, but it will never provide lasting fulfillment if we do not first cultivate peace within ourselves. True contentment comes not from what we achieve, but from who we become along the way. It is the peace that comes from knowing we are enough, regardless of what we accomplish. And once we find that peace, the rest of life, success, relationships, achievements, will fall into its rightful place. Part 4. The Mechanics of Desire. Desire is often painted as something we must chase, a beacon that promises to light the way to happiness. But the more we run toward it, the further it seems to move. It's an elusive pursuit that never truly satisfies, always promising fulfillment just beyond the next horizon, only to recede as we approach. The truth is that desire is not a road to happiness, but a mechanism designed to distract us from the deeper truth of life. It is not a force that leads us to peace, but one that keeps us trapped in a cycle of yearning, never-ending and never fully realized. When we speak of desire, we typically think of pleasure, instant gratification, that fleeting high we get when we indulge in something we want. It might be the pleasure of a new purchase, the excitement of a holiday, or the relief of satisfying hunger with comfort food. But if we take a step back and examine these desires, we begin to see that they are not driven by a genuine longing for joy or fulfillment. Instead, they are often driven by a desire to escape discomfort, to dull the edge of pain that we cannot bear to face. This is a hard truth to swallow. Many of our desires are not about seeking something better, but about avoiding something unpleasant. We buy things not because we truly need them, but because they offer a temporary escape from boredom, loneliness, or dissatisfaction. We dive into Netflix binges not because we seek joy, but because we want to numb the pain of facing our own thoughts or emotions. We reach for comfort food not because we are hungry, but because we are seeking relief from stress, anxiety, or sadness. Each of these desires is a response to discomfort, a reflexive attempt to escape the discomfort of life, even if only for a moment. It's as if we are all stuck on a hamster wheel, running faster and faster in pursuit of something that never quite satisfies. This wheel is a trap we willingly step into, thinking that with each turn we will eventually reach a place of peace. But the harder we run, the more it pulls us in until we are too exhausted to stop. The hamster wheel of desire is an endless cycle, where each fix leads to the need for another. No matter how much we consume, how much we indulge, the hunger only deepens, the void only widens. Consider the phenomenon of shopping therapy, the act of buying things to lift our spirits, to temporarily alleviate the discomfort of our daily struggles. We tell ourselves that a new outfit, a gadget, or a piece of furniture will bring us happiness, that it will fill the empty space inside. But the happiness we feel when we make a purchase is fleeting, dissipating as soon as the novelty wears off. And so we go back to the store, to the online shop, again and again, hoping that the next item will provide a more lasting sense of satisfaction. But it never does. Each purchase is simply another momentary distraction, another way to avoid confronting the discomfort that lies within. The same can be said for the endless cycle of binge-watching Netflix or scrolling through social media. We sit in front of screens for hours, not because we are seeking true enjoyment, but because we are seeking escape. The stories we watch are not our own, yet they give us something to focus on, something to numb the noise in our minds. The likes and comments we receive on social media are not signs of real connection, but quick fixes to the loneliness that often accompanies our lives. In these moments, we are not living. We are distracting ourselves from the discomfort of being present, of confronting our own thoughts and feelings. Similarly, the comfort we seek in food is not just about hunger. It is about soothing ourselves, numbing ourselves to the stress, anxiety, or sadness that we do not know how to cope with. A chocolate bar, a bowl of ice cream, a rich meal. These become our temporary relief, a way to comfort ourselves in the face of emotional pain. But when the food is gone, when the moment has passed, the discomfort remains. We may feel a momentary pleasure, but it is short-lived, and the cycle begins again. We reach for more, hoping for a lasting sense of satisfaction, but all we find is the same emptiness. It is in these patterns of behavior that we see the true mechanics of desire. Desire is not a pursuit of happiness. It is a mechanism designed to keep us distracted, to prevent us from facing the deeper discomforts of life. The more we indulge in our desires, the more we feed the cycle, and the less likely we are to find the peace we crave. Desire does not lead to fulfillment. It leads to exhaustion. It leads to the hamster wheel where we run and run, but never move forward. We think that if we just indulge a little more, buy a little more, watch a little more, we will feel better. But each moment of indulgence only brings us closer to the next, deeper craving. So, what can we do? How do we break free from this cycle of desire, from the endless chasing of fleeting pleasures? The first step is awareness. We must begin to see desire for what it truly is, not a path to happiness, but a mechanism designed to distract us from the truth. We must stop running on the hamster wheel and ask ourselves why we are reaching for these desires in the first place. What are we trying to avoid? What discomfort are we attempting to numb? The answers may be uncomfortable, but they are the key to breaking free. One powerful way to interrupt this cycle is through the practice of stillness. Instead of immediately reacting to discomfort by distracting ourselves, we can choose to sit with it, to allow ourselves to feel the discomfort without running from it. This is not easy. It requires courage and patience. But it is in the stillness, in the quiet moments, that we begin to confront the discomfort we have been avoiding. Instead of reaching for the nearest distraction, we can take a few minutes to simply sit with our feelings, whether they are sadness, anxiety, loneliness, or frustration. We can ask ourselves, what is this feeling trying to teach me? We can sit with it not as something to be fixed, but as something to be understood. Try this simple exercise. When you feel the urge to distract yourself, whether through food, shopping, or scrolling through your phone, stop for a moment. Take a deep breath and sit quietly for just 5 minutes. Close your eyes, notice the discomfort you are feeling, and simply be with it. Do not try to escape it. Do not judge it. Just sit with it, allow it to be there. In those 5 minutes, you may realize that the discomfort is not as unbearable as you thought. You may discover that you don't need to escape it to find peace. And in that stillness, you may find the beginning of freedom. This is not to say that desire is inherently bad. Desires are a part of being human. But when we understand that they often arise from a desire to escape discomfort, we can begin to see them for what they are. Not pathways to happiness, but distractions from the deeper work we need to do. By sitting with our discomfort and allowing ourselves to feel it fully, we can begin to free ourselves from the cycle of desire. We can start to find peace not in the things we accumulate or the pleasures we chase, but in the quiet acceptance of what is. The hamster wheel will always be there, waiting for us to step onto it. But once we see it for what it truly is, we no longer have to run. We can step off and choose a different path, a path that leads to peace, to understanding, and to freedom. And in that peace, we will find a happiness that is not fleeting but lasting. Part 5. The turning point: facing suffering instead of fleeing. There are moments in life when the fabric of our existence is torn open, revealing something we never wanted to see, but which, once exposed, can no longer be ignored. We live our lives chasing after success, pleasure, and comfort, always striving to avoid suffering. We wear masks, pretend to be okay, and tell ourselves that everything will be fine if we can just keep going, keep achieving, keep distracting ourselves from the deeper truths. But eventually, life has a way of pulling the rug out from under us, of forcing us to confront what we have been running from all along. For Siddhartha Gautama, the future Buddha, this moment of truth came when he stepped outside the walls of his luxurious palace. Raised in a world of unimaginable comfort and opulence, Siddhartha had never known suffering. His father, the king, had sheltered him from the harsh realities of life, ensuring that his son never saw the pain, aging, sickness, and death that so often accompany human existence. But one day, Siddhartha ventured beyond the palace gates, and what he witnessed changed his life forever. As he wandered through the streets of the city, Siddhartha encountered the reality that his father had tried so hard to protect him from. He saw an old man, frail and bent with age, struggling to walk. He saw a sick man, writhing in pain, unable to escape the agony of his condition. And worst of all, he saw a dead body, a person whose life had come to an end, never to return. In that moment, Siddhartha realized something profound. Life, no matter how beautiful, is impermanent. It is fleeting, fragile, and ultimately beyond our control. For the first time, Siddhartha was forced to face the truth that he had been running from all his life, dukkha, the universal truth of suffering. It wasn't that Siddhartha was a pessimist or that he wanted to wallow in despair. Far from it. What he realized was that suffering is not some abstract concept to be avoided, nor is it something that happens to a few unlucky individuals. It is an inescapable part of life itself. Suffering is not just the pain of illness, old age, or death. It is the deep dissatisfaction that comes from wanting things to be different than they are. It is the constant tug of desire, the yearning for what we don't have, and the fear of losing what we do. Dukkha, in its essence, is not about being negative. It is not about wallowing in sorrow or seeing life through a lens of pessimism. It is the recognition that no matter how much we strive, no matter how much we achieve, we will always be faced with the reality of change and impermanence. This is not a sad realization, it is a liberating one. Because once we understand the nature of suffering, we are no longer bound by it. We can stop running from it, and in doing so, we can begin the journey toward true freedom. When we stop running from suffering, something remarkable happens. Instead of avoiding pain, we begin to embrace it. Instead of pushing away discomfort, we start to sit with it, to listen to what it has to teach us. In that space of stillness, we can finally begin to heal. But we cannot heal until we first face the truth of our suffering. We cannot escape it by constantly running toward the next pleasure, the next distraction, the next achievement. Freedom, Siddhartha discovered, begins not when we avoid suffering, but when we face it head-on. In our modern world, we often find ourselves running in the same way Siddhartha did, trying to outrun discomfort, trying to escape the reality of suffering. We throw ourselves into work, into relationships, into the pursuit of material wealth and pleasure, hoping that these things will shield us from the pain we carry inside. We distract ourselves with social media, with Netflix, with shopping, with food, because we cannot bear to sit with the discomfort of our own thoughts and feelings. But the truth is, no amount of distraction will ever bring us the peace we seek. The more we run, the more exhausted we become. We chase happiness, but it slips further away with each step. And when we stop running, we are faced with the deep ache of emptiness. This is not an easy truth to accept, but it is the key to true freedom. The more we try to escape suffering, the more it controls us. The more we try to avoid it, the more it shapes our lives. This truth became clear to me during a deeply painful time in my own life. I had always been someone who believed that I could outrun my problems, that I could keep moving forward, achieving, accumulating, and distracting myself from the discomfort that lingered within. But when I lost someone close to me, someone who had been a constant source of love and support, I was faced with a pain I could no longer ignore. The ache of loss was so deep, so overwhelming that it consumed me. And for the first time, I couldn't run anymore. I had to face it. I had to sit with the grief, the emptiness, the uncertainty. And in that stillness, I found something unexpected. I found a kind of peace that I had never known before. This experience mirrored Siddhartha's journey. When he faced the reality of suffering, when he stopped running from it, he was able to discover a path to freedom, a path that would eventually lead him to enlightenment. It was not a path that avoided suffering, but one that embraced it, understood it, and ultimately transcended it. Siddhartha's discovery was not that life is meant to be free of pain, but that freedom comes when we stop running from that pain and learn to live with it. In our own lives, we can take this lesson to heart. We all experience suffering in some form, whether it is the loss of a loved one, the pain of a broken relationship, the stress of financial struggles, or the quiet ache of unfulfilled desires. But instead of running from these discomforts, instead of numbing ourselves to them, we can choose to face them. We can choose to sit with them, to explore them, and to see what they have to teach us. It may not be easy. It may feel like the most unnatural thing in the world to stop running, to stop distracting ourselves, and to simply sit with our pain. But when we do, we begin to see that suffering is not something to fear. It is not something to avoid. It is simply part of the human experience, a teacher in disguise. And when we face it, we discover that it is not the suffering itself that holds us captive, but our resistance to it. Perhaps, then, freedom begins when we stop running. Freedom begins when we stop chasing the next pleasure, the next distraction, the next achievement, and instead turn inward to face the discomfort we've been avoiding. It is only when we face suffering that we can truly transcend it. It is only when we stop running that we can finally find peace. Part 6. The Four Noble Truths, a Map of Freedom. Once we stop running from suffering, once we allow ourselves to sit with the discomfort of life instead of constantly escaping it, we begin to see patterns emerge. We notice that our pain is not random. It is not meaningless. There is a structure to our dissatisfaction, a rhythm to our unhappiness, and recognizing that structure is the first step toward liberation. This is where the wisdom of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, becomes profoundly relevant. Over 500 years ago, he articulated a map of understanding, a framework that does not promise that life will be free of pain, but shows us how to navigate it with clarity and freedom. These are the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is the truth of suffering itself, or dukkha. Dukkha is not just the obvious suffering of pain, illness, loss, or death. It is also the subtle dissatisfaction that permeates our lives, the constant background hum of unease that we may try to ignore but which never entirely goes away. It is the moment when we achieve a goal, yet find that the satisfaction fades faster than we expected. It is the ache that remains after a celebration, the quiet loneliness that returns even when surrounded by friends and family. Dukkha is not pessimism. It is the recognition that life, in all its impermanence and unpredictability, contains inherent limitations that no amount of chasing or striving can eliminate. Understanding this truth does not make life bitter. It makes life real. It allows us to stop pretending that we can hold on to fleeting pleasures and helps us to see that our dissatisfaction has its source not in external circumstances alone, but in the way we relate to them. The second noble truth identifies the origin of suffering, craving, attachment, and desire. It is the unrelenting habit of clinging to what is impermanent, the endless wanting for more of what we do not have, and the fear of losing what we do. In modern life, this takes many forms. It is the obsession with likes, shares, and followers on social media. It is the compulsion to buy, to upgrade, to compete. It is the relentless drive to prove our worth through achievements, possessions, and recognition. Craving is subtle and insidious. We do not always recognize it as the source of our unhappiness, yet it shapes our choices, our priorities, and our emotional state. When we cling to these desires, we are constantly at the mercy of conditions beyond our control. A promotion may be delayed, a relationship may end, a health crisis may strike, and suddenly the things we relied on for happiness are gone, leaving us disoriented and in pain. The truth of craving is that it creates suffering not because life is inherently cruel, but because we invest our sense of security and self-worth in the ever-changing world. The third noble truth offers hope. The cessation of suffering is possible. This cessation, called nibbana, is not a distant utopia or an unreachable goal. It is the liberation that comes when we stop clinging to impermanent things, when we loosen the grip of craving and attachment. The cessation of suffering does not mean that life will no longer contain challenges, losses, or discomforts. Rather, it means that we are no longer controlled by our compulsive reactions to them. We can experience life fully, without being enslaved to desire, without being driven by fear or aversion. This is a freedom that does not depend on external conditions, a profound peace that arises from within. Even amidst illness, loss, or adversity, a person who has realized this truth can remain centered, aware, and compassionate. They are free, not because the world has changed, but because their relationship to the world has transformed. The fourth noble truth is the path leading to the cessation of suffering, the Eightfold Path. This path is practical and actionable, a guide to ethical conduct, mental cultivation, and wisdom. It is not a rigid set of rules, but a framework for living in harmony with reality and with oneself. The path begins with right view, the understanding of the nature of suffering and the mechanisms that create it. We learn to see the world as it is, not as we wish it to be, recognizing that change is constant, that attachment leads to suffering, and that liberation is possible. Right intention follows, cultivating motivation that is rooted in renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness. Our actions, speech, and thoughts are then aligned with these intentions, bringing coherence and integrity to our lives. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood guide us to act ethically in the world, to speak truthfully and kindly, to avoid causing harm, and to earn a living in ways that support life rather than diminish it. These practices are not just moral imperatives. They are ways to cultivate a mind that is free from guilt, anxiety, and inner conflict. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration train the mind, allowing us to recognize harmful tendencies as they arise, to develop wholesome habits, and to deepen our awareness of reality. These practices bring clarity, stability, and resilience, enabling us to navigate life's challenges with equanimity and compassion. The Eightfold Path is not about perfection. It is about gradual transformation. It is about choosing, moment by moment, to act with awareness and wisdom rather than impulsively or out of habit. It is about recognizing that suffering is not something to be avoided at all costs, but something to be understood and transcended. The path is not linear. It is circular, interconnected, and dynamic. Each element supports the others, creating a holistic approach to living that cultivates freedom, clarity, and peace. In modern life, the Four Noble Truths are as relevant as they were thousands of years ago. When we face illness, financial strain, or the loss of loved ones, these truths provide a framework for understanding and responding. When we navigate the pressures of work, social obligations, and personal ambitions, they guide us toward choices that reduce unnecessary suffering and foster inner freedom. And when we confront our own desires, fears, and attachments, they offer a roadmap for cultivating a mind that is not enslaved by craving but is open, aware, and compassionate. Consider, for example, witnessing a loved one fall seriously ill. The initial reaction is often panic, fear, or a desperate wish that things could be different. We want the world to align with our desires, and when it does not, we suffer. But by recognizing the truth of suffering, we can see that our discomfort is not unique, that it is a natural part of life. By observing our attachment and craving for things to be different, we begin to loosen their grip on us. By turning toward the experience with awareness and compassion, we discover that we can hold both our pain and our presence simultaneously. We can be fully human, fully feeling, and fully alive, without being controlled by our emotions. The Four Noble Truths offer a map for navigating life, not by escaping reality but by understanding it. They remind us that suffering is universal, that desire is the root of our discontent, that freedom is possible, and that there is a practical path to achieve it. In this framework, we find clarity. The obstacles we face are not punishments but teachers. The discomfort we feel is not a sign of failure, but an opportunity for growth. The very experiences we wish to avoid are the doorway to understanding, compassion, and liberation. Perhaps this is why Siddhartha left the palace. Perhaps this is why he renounced the life of luxury he had known since birth. He understood, through the lens of experience and observation, that true freedom does not come from accumulating pleasures or avoiding pain. It comes from facing suffering directly, from understanding its causes, and from following a path that leads beyond it. His journey was not about rejecting life, but about embracing it fully, with all its impermanence, uncertainty, and inevitable hardships. In our own lives, we can apply the Four Noble Truths in subtle but profound ways. We can observe the dissatisfaction that arises within us, not as something to resist, but as something to understand. We can notice our cravings, our attachments, and the ways we seek to escape discomfort. we can explore the path of ethical living, mindful awareness, and intentional action. And in doing so, we begin to step off the treadmill of endless pursuit and step into a life that is guided by wisdom, clarity, and compassion. Maybe freedom begins when we stop running. Maybe it begins the moment we face the reality of suffering, not with fear but with courage. Maybe it begins when we recognize that the discomfort we have been avoiding is not the enemy but the guide. Each moment of awareness, each choice to act with intention rather than reaction, is a step on the path. Each breath of mindfulness, each act of kindness, each insight into the nature of desire brings us closer to a freedom that is not dependent on circumstances, but grounded in the very way we relate to life itself. Part 7. The Eightfold Path in Everyday America. The Eightfold Path, often seen as an abstract or distant philosophical concept, is not meant to exist only in the pages of ancient texts or within the walls of monasteries. It is not a theoretical framework to be admired from afar, nor a rigid set of rules to be followed with blind obedience. Instead, it is a practical living guide, a compass that can orient us through the everyday challenges of modern life, especially here in America, where the pace is relentless and distractions are constant. It provides a map for navigating our work, relationships, personal ambitions, and inner landscapes with clarity, balance, and compassion. At its heart, the Eightfold Path is about alignment. It asks us to bring our thoughts, speech, and actions into harmony with our understanding of the world. It asks us to cultivate awareness, intention, and ethical conduct, not as ideals to strive for in some distant future, but as practices to integrate into the rhythm of daily life. In this sense, it is profoundly modern. It meets us where we are, whether we are commuting in Los Angeles traffic, walking the streets of Chicago, sipping coffee in a Brooklyn cafe, or balancing the demands of a home office in San Francisco. Consider right speech. In a high-pressure workplace, the temptation to cut corners, gossip, or lash out in frustration can be strong. Emails are sent hastily, voices raised in irritation, meetings dominated by ego-driven agendas. Right speech does not demand perfection. It is about cultivating awareness of the impact of our words and choosing to communicate with honesty, clarity, and kindness. It is about pausing before reacting, asking ourselves, is what I am about to say true, necessary, and beneficial? By practicing right speech, a tense meeting can shift from a battlefield of competing voices to a space of constructive dialogue. Conflicts can be approached not with defensiveness, but with curiosity and openness. Words become tools of connection rather than weapons of separation. Right livelihood is another example that translates seamlessly into modern life. In choosing a career, we are often guided by salary, prestige, or opportunity. But right livelihood asks us to consider not only personal gain, but the ethical impact of our work on the broader world. This might mean a marketing professional choosing not to promote products that are harmful or deceptive, even if it costs them contracts. It might mean a software engineer questioning the societal consequences of their creations. It might mean simplifying lifestyle choices to create the freedom to engage in work that aligns with values, not merely profits. Right livelihood encourages us to integrate ethics into our professional lives, ensuring that our labor contributes to the alleviation of suffering rather than its perpetuation. Right mindfulness can appear deceptively simple, but it has a transformative impact when practiced in the ordinary moments of life. Drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, for instance, becomes more than a ritual of caffeine consumption. It becomes a practice of awareness. You notice the warmth of the cup, the aroma rising with each sip, the way your body awakens with the first taste. Each sensation is acknowledged fully, without rushing, without distraction. This single moment of mindful awareness anchors us to the present, reminding us that life unfolds in the now, not in the endless planning or worrying about what comes next. It is a reminder that even ordinary routines, when infused with mindfulness, become opportunities for awakening. Building on this, we can introduce a modern adaptation, mindful commuting. Whether driving, walking, or taking public transit, commuting can often feel like a daily drain, a repetitive task to endure. But through mindfulness, commuting can become a deliberate practice of presence. As you navigate traffic in Los Angeles or the crowded subway cars of New York, notice your breathing, the sensations in your body, the movement of your feet or hands. Observe the ebb and flow of the city, the rhythm of life around you without judgment. Each stoplight, each crosswalk, each pause in movement becomes an anchor to the present. Mindful commuting transforms a mundane necessity into a practice that cultivates patience, awareness, and resilience, reminding us that we are fully alive in every moment, even amidst chaos. Right view and right intention, the first two factors of the Eightfold Path, form the foundation of this practice. Right view invites us to see reality as it is, not as we wish it to be, recognizing the impermanent nature of circumstances and the causes of our suffering. Right intention asks us to cultivate a mindset of goodwill, harmlessness, and renunciation of destructive desires. Together, they guide our perception and motivation, shaping how we interact with the world, how we choose our words, how we decide where to invest our energy. The path continues through right action. In contemporary life, this can mean simple, deliberate choices, refraining from harming others, acting with integrity in financial dealings, treating colleagues with respect, honoring commitments in personal relationships. Ethical conduct is not imposed externally. It emerges naturally when we cultivate mindfulness, clarity, and compassion. Each small act of integrity, each decision made with awareness, contributes to a life of coherence and inner harmony. Right effort asks us to actively nurture wholesome states and let go of harmful ones. In practical terms, this could mean engaging in regular self-reflection, recognizing when anger, jealousy, or resentment arises, and choosing to redirect our energy. It could mean setting aside time each day to cultivate creativity, study, or meditation, deliberately fostering qualities such as patience, generosity, and gratitude. It is the recognition that the mind, like a garden, requires intentional tending. Without it, weeds of negativity and distraction take root. Finally, right concentration invites us to cultivate deep focus and clarity. While the traditional practice emphasizes meditative absorption, in daily life it can translate to the ability to immerse ourselves fully in any task, whether writing a report, listening to a friend, or preparing a meal. Concentration strengthens our capacity to be present, to act with discernment, and to remain composed amidst the countless demands of modern existence. It is the anchor that holds all the other elements of the path together, allowing us to integrate ethics, mindfulness, and effort into a coherent whole. Imagine a teacher in a bustling classroom in Chicago. Each day she walks in with the intention to help her students learn and grow. She speaks with clarity and compassion, noticing the subtle reactions of her pupils, adjusting her words and tone to nurture understanding rather than judgment. She organizes her lessons with integrity, ensuring that each student is respected and valued. She breathes deliberately during stressful moments, cultivating patience and focus. Through these practices, her classroom becomes a living expression of the Eightfold Path. She is not perfect, but each moment of mindful action contributes to the collective well-being of the students and to her own sense of purpose. The beauty of the Eightfold Path is that it is not limited to formal meditation or isolated spiritual practices. It is meant to be woven into the fabric of everyday life. Commuting to work becomes a practice of awareness. Conversations with colleagues become opportunities for skillful speech. Decisions about how to earn a living become choices of ethical alignment. Even the small moments, the first sip of coffee, the pause before responding to a text, the act of listening fully to a friend, become moments of practice. Each moment carries the potential for awakening. Through mindful integration of the Eightfold Path, life becomes a laboratory of self-discovery. We begin to see the patterns that lead to suffering, the ways in which craving and attachment shape our experience. We start to recognize that freedom is not something to be pursued externally, but cultivated internally. The path is gradual. It is not a one-time event or a sudden transformation. It unfolds through consistent, deliberate practice, through attention and awareness applied moment by moment. This integration is not theoretical. Across America today, countless individuals are discovering the transformative power of the Eightfold Path, even without formal labels or adherence to Buddhist doctrine. Professionals, parents, artists, and students are finding that living with mindfulness, ethical integrity, and intentional effort reduces stress, enhances focus, strengthens relationships, and brings a profound sense of fulfillment that external achievements cannot provide. The wisdom of the path is universal. It meets the challenges of contemporary life with clarity, compassion, and practical guidance. Perhaps the most radical insight is that the path does not require extraordinary circumstances. We do not need to retreat to a monastery or abandon our daily responsibilities. The principles can be applied on a train ride to Manhattan, during a lunch break in Los Angeles, or while walking through a quiet neighborhood in Seattle. The moments of daily life, often overlooked or dismissed, are the very moments in which practice becomes most potent. A single moment of awareness, a single intentional choice, can ripple outward, transforming our experience and the experience of those around us. As we walk this path, we begin to notice subtle shifts. Our reactions are less impulsive. Our minds are less fragmented. Our relationships deepen because we approach them with clarity and presence. We find that we are less controlled by craving and aversion, more capable of responding with wisdom and compassion. We are not perfect, but each step taken with awareness brings us closer to the freedom and peace that the Eightfold Path promises. In embracing the Eightfold Path in everyday life, we discover that spiritual practice is not separate from living. It is the art of living itself. Each breath, each word, each action becomes an opportunity to cultivate awareness, integrity, and compassion. By weaving the path into the ordinary moments, we transform not only ourselves, but also the world we inhabit. The streets, offices, schools, and homes we move through daily become the fields in which our consciousness matures, and the canvas upon which our liberation is painted. Part 8. Redefining happiness from fleeting pleasure to lasting peace. In the world we inhabit today, happiness is often defined by the magnitude of our pleasures, the size of our achievements, and the frequency of our victories. We are conditioned to equate happiness with accumulation. More wealth, more recognition, more travel, more experiences. Advertisements promise it, social media reinforces it, and even our closest circles celebrate it. Yet the more we pursue it as an external goal, the more it eludes us. This is the illusion of fleeting pleasure, the mirage that disappears the moment we try to grasp it. True happiness, the kind that endures, is not found in these transient experiences. It cannot be captured in a luxury vacation in Miami, a promotion at work, or even in the applause of 1,000 spectators at a theater. The pursuit of such external validation is like chasing sunlight reflecting on a wall. The glint catches your eye, but no matter how fast you move, it will always slip just beyond your grasp. And yet, paradoxically, this is the very pursuit that dominates our lives, leaving us exhausted, frustrated, and perpetually unsatisfied. Consider the simple joys we often overlook: the warmth of sunlight on our skin during a walk in Central Park, the aroma of fresh coffee on a quiet morning in San Francisco, or the fleeting smile of a stranger passing by on the street. These moments are subtle, easily missed, yet when we pause to experience them fully, they carry a profound sense of satisfaction that no grand achievement can match. The mind, once conditioned to constantly chase, begins to recognize the value of presence over pursuit, awareness over accumulation. Happiness, in this sense, is not something we acquire. It is something that arises naturally when the mind ceases its relentless chase. This shift in perspective is not merely philosophical. It has practical consequences for our mental and emotional well-being. Studies in psychology have shown that people who place excessive emphasis on achieving happiness or material success often experience greater anxiety, depression, and dissatisfaction. The relentless striving amplifies the awareness of what is missing rather than enhancing what is present. By contrast, those who focus on living meaningfully, cultivating understanding, and acting with compassion often experience a deeper, more stable form of happiness as a byproduct. Happiness, therefore, is not a goal to be pursued directly, but a natural outcome of living wisely and intentionally. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate this understanding is through mindfulness. Mindfulness allows us to observe our experiences without immediately categorizing them as good or bad, pleasurable or painful. It helps us recognize the impermanent nature of our thoughts, emotions, and sensations, and it nurtures a profound appreciation for the present moment. For instance, when drinking tea or coffee in the morning, mindfulness invites us to feel the warmth of the cup, to notice the aroma rising into the air, to savor each sip as it touches our tongue. In this simple practice, we begin to experience a joy that is immediate, accessible, and enduring, independent of external circumstances. Another critical insight is that the cessation of craving and attachment is central to lasting happiness. Desire, as we have discussed, is often rooted in the need to escape discomfort or secure something external. By recognizing the impermanence of these objects and experiences, and by gradually releasing our clinging, we open the door to a happiness that does not rely on acquisition or approval. The mind, freed from the constant pull of craving, can rest in a state of equanimity, experiencing joy as a natural accompaniment rather than a fleeting reward. This approach also transforms how we relate to challenges and adversity. Life is inevitably filled with setbacks, losses, and disappointments. A vacation may be canceled, a promotion denied, a loved one fall ill. In the past, such events might have triggered a cascade of frustration, anxiety, and despair, a reinforcement of the mind's habitual craving for permanence and control. Yet, by embracing the impermanent nature of life and cultivating mindfulness and compassion, we can meet these challenges with resilience. We acknowledge the pain without being consumed by it. We allow ourselves to grieve without clinging to the desire for things to be different. And we find in these moments an opportunity to deepen our understanding and compassion. Gratitude is another powerful practice that aligns with this redefinition of happiness. When we pause to recognize the gifts already present in our lives, the love of family and friends, the beauty of nature, the simple act of being alive, we cultivate a sense of fulfillment that is not contingent on external conditions. Gratitude shifts our attention from what is lacking to what is abundant, from craving to appreciation, from temporary pleasure to enduring peace. Equally important is the cultivation of compassion. By extending our care and understanding to others, we move beyond the narrow confines of self-centered desire. Acts of kindness, generosity, and empathy create ripples of happiness that extend far beyond ourselves. When we help alleviate the suffering of another, we experience a profound sense of connection and fulfillment that no material gain can provide. Happiness becomes less about satisfying our own desires and more about nurturing the well-being of those around us. It is a joy that grows in the act of giving, in the recognition of shared humanity, and in the understanding that our lives are interconnected with countless others. This redefinition of happiness also invites us to reconsider our approach to work and achievement. Instead of striving for success as an end in itself, we can pursue meaningful engagement in our tasks, whether at the office, at home, or in the community. When our efforts are guided by purpose, integrity, and care, the outcomes, while still subject to impermanence, become sources of genuine satisfaction. Success is no longer measured by accolades, wealth, or recognition, but by the quality of our engagement and the positive impact we create. This shift allows us to approach work with dedication and joy, rather than anxiety and compulsion. Even in moments of solitude, this approach transforms our experience. When we sit alone with our thoughts, free from the distractions of screens, notifications, and endless obligations, we encounter the fullness of life within. The quiet mind becomes a sanctuary where we can observe our inner world with clarity and compassion. We notice the transient nature of thoughts and feelings, recognizing that pleasure and pain arise and pass, like waves on the ocean. This awareness fosters a deep stability, a grounded happiness that is independent of external circumstances. To integrate these practices into modern life, one might begin with small, deliberate exercises. Mindful breathing for a few minutes each morning, journaling moments of gratitude each evening, pausing before reacting in conversation, or performing a single act of kindness without expectation of recognition. Over time, these small actions accumulate, reshaping the mind and creating the conditions for lasting peace. Happiness, in this sense, becomes a byproduct of a life lived with awareness, intention, and compassion, rather than a goal pursued in isolation. Ultimately, the redefinition of happiness asks us to shift our priorities. It asks us to value wisdom over accumulation, presence over performance, and compassion over conquest. By embracing impermanence, releasing attachment, cultivating mindfulness, and extending care to others, we move from fleeting pleasures to enduring contentment. Happiness ceases to be an elusive target and becomes a natural companion of a life lived authentically and intentionally. In this reimagined perspective, joy is no longer measured by the applause of others, the accumulation of possessions, or the fleeting thrill of achievement. It is measured by the depth of presence, the clarity of mind, and the openness of heart. It is the quiet, steady joy that arises when we recognize our interconnectedness, when we act with integrity, when we rest fully in the present moment. This is the happiness that endures, the happiness that transforms suffering into insight, that transforms distraction into attention, that transforms ordinary life into a path of awakening. By redefining happiness in this way, we begin to see that the true measure of a fulfilling life is not external success, but internal liberation. It is not what we acquire, but what we cultivate within. It is not the avoidance of discomfort, but the conscious embrace of the present, the conscious release of craving, and the conscious expansion of compassion. In this way, happiness becomes a reflection of our inner freedom, a natural consequence of understanding the mechanics of desire, and a testament to the power of living mindfully. Part 9. Living the Path in Modern Times. Living in the 21st century is a constant negotiation with distractions, obligations, and pressures that never seem to end. We navigate bustling streets in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, commuting through traffic or crowded subway cars, carrying invisible weights on our shoulders. We balance jobs, family responsibilities, social obligations, and personal ambitions, often feeling pulled in multiple directions at once. In this fast-paced world, it is easy to become disconnected from ourselves, from the present moment, and from the deeper truths that underlie a meaningful life. Yet it is precisely in this modern context that the timeless wisdom of the Buddha becomes profoundly relevant. The practices and insights that guided Siddhartha over 2,000 years ago are not relics of an ancient past. They are practical tools for navigating the complexities and challenges of contemporary life. To live the path today is not about withdrawing from the world or renouncing modern conveniences. It is about integration, bringing awareness, intention, and ethical action into the ordinary moments of our daily existence. It is about transforming routine experiences into opportunities for presence and growth. For instance, consider commuting to work, a task many of us approach with irritation, impatience, or distraction. Mindful commuting transforms this mundane activity into a practice of awareness. Whether sitting on a train, navigating a car through traffic, or walking down crowded sidewalks, we can pay attention to each step, each breath, each sensation, and each thought as it arises. We observe without judgment, noticing the rhythm of the city, the sounds, the movement of people around us, and the patterns of our own mind. In doing so, we cultivate patience, reduce stress, and strengthen the ability to remain centered amidst chaos. At work, the principles of the Eightfold Path can be woven into our professional lives in tangible ways. Right speech, for example, can transform interactions with colleagues. In high-pressure environments, it is easy to react with anger, frustration, or defensiveness. By practicing mindful communication, we pause before speaking, considering whether our words are truthful, necessary, and kind. We respond rather than react, fostering a culture of clarity, trust, and collaboration. Right action extends this principle into our behavior, choosing integrity in our decisions, refraining from harm, and contributing positively to our environment. Whether in boardrooms, classrooms, hospitals, or studios, ethical action grounded in awareness creates stability and alignment between our inner values and external behaviors. Right livelihood, another component of the path, encourages us to examine the ethical implications of our work and to choose professions that support life rather than diminish it. A marketer might reflect on whether the products they promote align with their values. A business owner might assess how their company impacts employees, consumers, and the environment. Even small adjustments, such as prioritizing transparency, fairness, or sustainability, integrate ethical awareness into our everyday responsibilities. By aligning work with purpose, we create a sense of meaning that cannot be attained through mere compensation, prestige, or external recognition. Beyond professional life, living the path involves the ordinary, intimate moments of home and relationships. Right intention reminds us to cultivate goodwill, harmlessness, and compassion toward those around us. This means approaching conflicts with understanding rather than judgment, practicing patience with children or partners, and engaging in daily acts of care without expectation of reward. Right mindfulness allows us to be fully present in these interactions, whether sharing a meal, listening to a friend, or attending to a family member. By observing our own reactions, noticing the impermanent nature of thoughts and emotions, and responding consciously, we reduce suffering for ourselves and others. The integration of right effort and right concentration allows us to train the mind in resilience and focus. In contemporary life, our attention is constantly fragmented by notifications, social media, and the demands of multitasking. By deliberately cultivating concentration, even in small daily practices such as focused breathing, mindful walking, or brief periods of reflection, we strengthen our capacity to remain attentive and present. These practices reduce impulsive reactions, enhance emotional regulation, and create the mental clarity needed to navigate complex modern realities. Right effort ensures that we are consistent and deliberate in maintaining wholesome mental states, while gradually letting go of negative habits, thoughts, and attachments. Modern applications of the Eightfold Path extend into community engagement and social responsibility. Acts of generosity, volunteer work, and compassionate activism become living expressions of the path. In helping to alleviate suffering in the lives of others, we experience a deep sense of fulfillment and interconnectedness. Whether it is mentoring a student, supporting a neighbor, or contributing to social causes, these actions embody the principle that our lives are not isolated, but entwined with the well-being of others. Happiness and contentment arise naturally when we move beyond self-centered desires to a broader awareness of shared humanity. Consider, for example, a healthcare professional during a particularly demanding period. The stress is high, the workload overwhelming, and the emotional toll immense. Yet by bringing mindfulness to each patient interaction, practicing compassionate care, and maintaining awareness of their own mental states. The practitioner not only delivers better care, but also experiences a grounded, resilient sense of fulfillment. The same principle applies to teachers, artists, entrepreneurs, and parents. When awareness, intention, and ethical conduct are integrated into daily actions, ordinary tasks become profound practices, opportunities to cultivate inner freedom amidst the demands of contemporary life. Even the smallest daily rituals offer opportunities for mindful practice. Drinking a cup of tea or coffee in the morning, washing dishes, walking a dog, or commuting to work can all be infused with mindfulness. Paying attention to the sensory experience, noticing the flow of thoughts and emotions, and consciously choosing our responses transforms routine actions into pathways for awakening. This perspective shifts our relationship with life from one of automatic reaction to one of deliberate engagement, from constant striving to conscious participation. The Eightfold Path is not a linear checklist, it is an interconnected framework. Improvement in one area supports growth in another. Mindful communication strengthens relationships, which in turn fosters ethical living. Consistent practice of concentration and awareness enhances our ability to maintain wholesome intentions and act in alignment with our values. The path is holistic, ensuring that our personal development, professional life, and relationships are integrated and mutually reinforcing. Living the path in modern times also involves cultivating self-reflection. Journaling, meditation, or quiet contemplation allow us to examine the ways in which craving, aversion, and delusion shape our experiences. We begin to recognize habitual patterns that lead to unnecessary suffering, and we gain the insight needed to respond differently. Each moment of self-reflection strengthens our understanding of the mind, deepening our awareness of how we create our own suffering and how we can cultivate freedom. In applying the Eightfold Path to contemporary life, we come to understand that the journey is gradual, continuous, and deeply personal. It does not require perfection, nor does it demand the abandonment of responsibilities or aspirations. Instead, it invites us to infuse awareness, intention, and compassion into every moment, every decision, and every action. By doing so, we gradually shift from reactive living to conscious participation, from being controlled by circumstances to shaping our lives with clarity and purpose. Through this integration, the path becomes tangible and deeply transformative. We experience life more vividly, noticing subtle joys, small miracles, and fleeting moments of connection that previously went unnoticed. We develop resilience in the face of challenges, equanimity amidst uncertainty, and a profound sense of alignment with our deepest values. Our relationships improve as we communicate with presence and empathy. Our work gains meaning as we act with integrity and intention. Even the routine activities of daily life, once mechanical and mundane, become sacred opportunities for practice. Ultimately, living the Eightfold Path in modern America is about creating a life of coherence and authenticity. It is about navigating the complexities of contemporary existence with clarity, mindfulness, and ethical intention. By bringing the principles of the path into our daily routines, our professional endeavors, our relationships, and our moments of solitude, we cultivate a stable foundation of inner freedom. In this freedom, happiness is no longer a fragile external reward, but a natural consequence of living wisely, compassionately, and intentionally. The journey is not easy, nor is it without setbacks. There will be days when impatience, fear, and distraction pull us away from mindfulness. There will be moments when ethical choices are difficult, when compassion is tested, and when concentration falters. Yet each time we return to awareness, each time we choose to act with intention, we reinforce the path. Each moment becomes a step toward liberation, a step toward living fully and authentically, a step toward transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. In essence, The Eightfold Path is not an abstract doctrine. It is a living, breathing practice that can guide us through the challenges of modern life. It offers a way to cultivate presence, wisdom, and compassion in a world that often feels overwhelming and chaotic. By integrating the path into everyday moments, we transform our experiences, our relationships, and ultimately our own consciousness. Life, in all its complexity, becomes a canvas for awakening. We begin to see that happiness and peace are not distant goals to be chased, but companions that arise naturally when we act with awareness, intention, and compassion. The streets we walk, the work we do, the moments of quiet reflection, and even the challenges we face become part of a journey toward freedom. In living the path, we no longer react blindly to the currents of life. We navigate them with clarity, purpose, and grace. The Eightfold Path is the map, and our daily lives are the terrain through which we move. Each step, each breath, each choice becomes an expression of awakening, a practice of liberation, and a testimony to the profound possibility of living fully in the modern world. Part 8. Redefining happiness from fleeting pleasure to lasting peace. Happiness, as most people understand it, is fleeting. It arrives like a gust of wind, sweeping over us briefly before disappearing, leaving only the faintest trace of warmth or satisfaction. We chase it relentlessly, believing that the next achievement, the next pleasure, the next moment of external validation will bring permanence to what is inherently impermanent. Yet no matter how hard we run, the wind slips through our fingers, leaving behind a subtle emptiness we cannot quite name. Freedom, on the other hand, is not a gust but the sky itself, vast, open, and unbounded. It is ever present, containing within it all the breezes, all the storms, all the changes, without being disturbed by any of them. The difference between happiness and freedom is profound. When we tie our sense of well-being to the transient pleasures of life, we are constantly measuring, comparing, and questioning. Am I happy yet? Am I living the way I should? Is this enough? This mental obsession keeps the mind restless, caught in a cycle of craving and disappointment. It is a treadmill with no end, where the pursuit of joy paradoxically increases anxiety and dissatisfaction. The more we question our happiness, the more it seems to elude us. We have all experienced this in subtle ways, finishing a project only to immediately look for the next one, receiving praise only to feel we haven't done enough, celebrating a milestone only to realize the excitement fades before we can even savor it. The cycle perpetuates because we are measuring our internal states against external expectations, rather than cultivating an inner foundation of peace. True joy, however, arises not from accumulating pleasures but from releasing attachment to them. When we let go of the obsession with being happy, when we cease to define ourselves by the highs and lows of our experiences, a different kind of contentment emerges. It is steady, enduring, and independent of circumstance. It is not dependent on what we possess, who praises us, or what accolades we receive. Instead, it flows naturally from a mind that has learned to rest, to observe, and to accept life as it is. One practical way to cultivate this enduring joy is through a simple daily exercise, gratitude and letting go. Each evening before sleep, take a moment to write down 3 things for which you are grateful. They can be large or small: the smile of a loved one, a beautiful sunset, a quiet moment with your morning coffee. Alongside this, identify one thing you choose to release, something that has been holding your attention, causing tension, or anchoring you in dissatisfaction. By acknowledging what you appreciate and consciously letting go of what no longer serves you, you train the mind to recognize the impermanence of experiences and the freedom that comes from releasing attachment. Over time, this practice reshapes perception. We begin to notice abundance rather than scarcity, peace rather than tension, clarity rather than confusion. This practice is more than a ritual. It is a radical reorientation of the mind. When we release the compulsion to cling, we stop measuring life against a standard of idealized happiness and allow ourselves to inhabit reality fully. The sensations of discomfort, frustration, or fear no longer dominate us. They are observed, acknowledged, and allowed to pass. In doing so, we find that moments of happiness arise spontaneously, unbidden, and unforced. They are not chased. They bloom naturally, like sunlight filtering through clouds after a storm. Imagine waking in the morning and sipping your coffee with full attention. The warmth of the cup, the aroma of roasted beans, the quiet rhythm of the world outside. These simple experiences become profound when we cease the mental chatter about whether we should be happy. When the mind is no longer preoccupied with measuring its state against an imagined ideal, life itself becomes a source of gentle, enduring contentment. The sky is always there. The wind is always there. The moments of joy arise when we stop gripping, when we stop striving, and when we open ourselves to experience the present moment without expectation. The liberation of not needing to constantly assess happiness has profound psychological effects. Anxiety decreases because the mind is no longer obsessed with securing fleeting pleasure. Frustration diminishes because outcomes are no longer the measure of self-worth. Depression loses its grip because the sense of inadequacy tied to unmet desires is softened. Freedom transforms the relationship with life. Instead of living reactively, perpetually responding to external events, we live proactively, choosing awareness, kindness, and intentionality in each moment. This shift is neither quick nor easy. It requires repeated practice, daily attention, and a willingness to face discomfort without distraction. The mind must be trained to recognize the transient nature of experiences, to observe emotions without judgment, and to cultivate a steady awareness that is independent of pleasure or pain. But the rewards are profound. A mind freed from the compulsive chase of happiness experiences life fully, finds joy in unexpected moments, and discovers a resilience that external success could never provide. In addition to gratitude and letting go, mindful observation of thought patterns enhances this transformation. Each time we notice the mind racing toward what we desire or recoiling from what we fear, we can pause and observe the movement without identifying with it. The thought, "I am not happy yet," becomes simply a mental event, not an absolute truth. By recognizing this, we prevent habitual reactions that perpetuate suffering. In this space, we cultivate serenity and equanimity, which allows joy to emerge naturally, unimpeded by expectation or craving. True happiness, therefore, is less about accumulation and more about release. It is not found in chasing experiences, but in cultivating a mind that is present, aware, and unbound. Each act of letting go, the relinquishing of judgment, the loosening of attachment, the release of fear, creates a space in which joy can arise. Each practice, each moment of awareness, each mindful pause contributes to a life of enduring peace. This redefined understanding of happiness transforms not only our internal state, but also our relationships and interactions with the world. When we are no longer preoccupied with personal satisfaction, we become more attentive, more empathetic, and more generous. We listen with presence, respond with clarity, and act with intention. Happiness is no longer a commodity to be acquired. It becomes the natural byproduct of living authentically, ethically, and mindfully. Over time, as we cultivate this approach, we notice subtle yet profound changes. The mind becomes less restless, the heart less burdened, and the body more at ease. The storms of life, loss, disappointment, uncertainty, still arrive, but their impact is less destabilizing. Our awareness allows us to navigate challenges with clarity and resilience. The fleeting pleasures of external success become less compelling because the mind has discovered a deeper, more reliable source of contentment. Redefining happiness in this way also reshapes our goals and aspirations. We no longer chase for the sake of chasing. We no longer strive to fill a void that cannot be filled. Instead, we focus on cultivating meaningful experiences, nurturing relationships, and developing inner resources. We engage in acts of compassion, practice mindfulness in daily routines, and embrace impermanence as a fundamental truth rather than a source of anxiety. Through this process, freedom becomes our foundation, and joy emerges as a natural consequence. In essence, the shift from fleeting pleasure to lasting peace is the liberation of the mind from attachment. When we stop grasping, when we stop measuring, when we stop comparing, we create the conditions for authentic joy to flourish. This joy is not dependent on circumstances, approval, or accumulation. It is inherent in the practice of presence, awareness, and ethical living. Like the vast sky that contains the changing winds, our consciousness can remain steady amidst the fluctuations of life, experiencing both pleasure and pain without being controlled by either. The exercises of daily gratitude, mindful observation, and letting go are not trivial routines. They are transformative practices that cultivate this enduring happiness. Each evening, noting 3 things we appreciate and releasing 1 attachment reshapes the mental landscape, gradually diminishing the power of craving and reinforcing the natural contentment that is always available when the mind is clear. Over weeks and months, the accumulation of these small practices yields profound shifts in perception, emotional resilience, and the capacity to experience life fully. Ultimately, redefining happiness is about recognizing the difference between temporary pleasure and lasting peace, between chasing what eludes us and cultivating the freedom that is always within reach. It is about turning our attention from the external to the internal, from striving to being, from grasping to letting go. In doing so, we discover that true joy arises spontaneously when we release the compulsion to control, when we accept the impermanence of all things, and when we live each moment with awareness, gratitude, and compassion. Happiness is no longer a target to be chased or a measure to be calculated. It becomes the natural fragrance of a mind that is free, the effortless bloom of contentment arising from the soil of presence and understanding. By embracing the impermanence of pleasure, relinquishing attachments, and cultivating gratitude, we step into a life where joy is not fleeting but enduring, where peace is not contingent but inherent, and where freedom becomes the true measure of well-being. Part 9. Living the Path in Modern Times. In the modern world, life moves with a speed and intensity that can feel overwhelming. The streets of New York are filled with honking cars, flashing lights, and crowds of people moving in every direction, each with their own worries, ambitions, and distractions. In Los Angeles, the sprawling urban landscape stretches endlessly, where commutes can take hours, schedules are packed, and the pressure to succeed is palpable. In cities across America, whether it's Chicago, Seattle, or Miami, people navigate careers, families, social obligations, and personal goals simultaneously, and the constant motion can make it difficult to find grounding. It is in this environment that the wisdom of the Buddha, though ancient, becomes deeply relevant. His teachings, particularly the Eightfold Path and the understanding of suffering, are not relics of a distant past. They are practical guides for living with clarity, compassion, and purpose amidst the complexity of contemporary life. Living the path today is not about abandoning responsibilities, retreating from the world, or seeking an idealized form of perfection. It is about integration, embedding the principles of mindfulness, ethical conduct, and intentional action into the very fabric of daily life. Each moment becomes an opportunity for practice, whether during work, commuting, relationships, or solitude. The key is consistency, awareness, and deliberate engagement with life as it unfolds, rather than fleeing into distraction or striving for external validation. Consider right speech in the context of a modern office. Workplace environments often demand speed, efficiency, and results. Emails are sent in haste, meetings can become battlegrounds of competing egos, and tensions run high under tight deadlines. Practicing right speech does not require perfection, but it encourages pause and reflection. Before responding to a tense email or engaging in a heated conversation, one asks, are these words truthful, necessary, and kind? This deliberate approach fosters understanding and prevents harm. By practicing mindful communication, conflicts can transform from sources of stress to opportunities for connection, learning, and collaboration. Words, which have the power to wound or heal, become tools of compassion rather than instruments of division. Right action extends this principle to our behavior. In everyday life, it involves ethical decision-making, integrity, and respect for all beings. A corporate executive might consider how business decisions affect employees, communities, and the environment. A parent might approach discipline with awareness and patience, rather than reactivity. Even seemingly small actions, returning a lost item, honoring commitments, or refraining from gossip, become significant when performed consciously. Ethical conduct nurtures a sense of alignment between internal values and external behaviors, reducing the cognitive dissonance and emotional tension that so often plague modern life. Right livelihood challenges us to examine the ethical implications of our careers. While many pursue positions that offer prestige or financial reward, the Buddha's guidance reminds us to consider the impact of our work on the lives of others. A marketing professional may need to weigh the consequences of promoting a product that could cause harm. An engineer or software developer might question the societal effects of their innovations. The principle encourages a conscious choice of profession or a deliberate adjustment in approach to ensure that work contributes positively to the world. Even minor changes, such as choosing sustainability over convenience or transparency over deception, align professional activity with ethical principles and cultivate deeper satisfaction. Right mindfulness is perhaps the most directly applicable practice to contemporary daily life. It encourages full awareness of the present moment, observing thoughts, sensations, and experiences without judgment. Even mundane routines, drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, walking the dog, washing dishes, commuting to work, become opportunities for presence. Noticing the warmth of the cup, the sound of footsteps on a sidewalk, or the rhythm of the train allows ordinary moments to become profound acts of mindfulness. Mindfulness trains the mind to notice habitual reactions and impulsive behaviors, creating space for intentional choices and reducing suffering caused by automatic reactivity. Building on this, mindful commuting offers a modern adaptation of the path. Daily travel, whether by car, train, or on foot, can be filled with frustration and impatience. Yet, by intentionally observing each aspect of the journey, the movement of vehicles, the flow of people, the sounds, the sensations, and the arising of thoughts, we cultivate awareness and patience. Each stoplight, each crosswalk, and each pause becomes an anchor for presence. In practicing mindfulness during commuting, a routine often seen as stressful or draining is transformed into a daily exercise of attention and equanimity. Right effort involves deliberately cultivating wholesome states of mind and releasing unwholesome ones. In practice, this means observing negative thought patterns and consciously shifting attention toward constructive, compassionate, and mindful behaviors. This could involve taking moments throughout the day to pause, breathe, and redirect attention, interrupting cycles of anxiety or frustration, or consciously practicing acts of kindness or patience. The cultivation of wholesome mental states strengthens resilience, reduces emotional volatility, and supports ethical action. Right concentration reinforces these practices, encouraging deep focus and clarity. While traditionally associated with meditative absorption in contemporary life, it manifests as the ability to fully engage with tasks, whether professional, creative, or relational. Concentration fosters presence, reduces mind wandering, and allows deliberate action rather than impulsive reaction. By integrating concentration into daily routines, we enhance our capacity to act mindfully, ethically, and with purpose, aligning our internal states with the demands and opportunities of daily life. Consider the example of a teacher in a crowded urban school in Chicago. Each day, she navigates a classroom of diverse students, balancing the pressures of curriculum standards with the individual needs of each child. By consciously applying the principles of the Eightfold Path, she approaches each student interaction with right speech, communicates patiently and clearly, acts ethically in guiding behavior, and remains present through mindfulness. Through these practices, moments of challenge transform into opportunities for growth, connection, and insight. The classroom becomes a living environment for the practice of presence, awareness, and ethical engagement, benefiting both teacher and students. Even outside formal responsibilities, the principles can be applied to the ordinary moments of life. Preparing a meal can become an act of mindfulness, attending fully to the sensory experience of cooking and eating. Interacting with friends or family can be approached with intentional listening and compassionate communication. Household chores, often viewed as mundane, become opportunities to cultivate patience, presence, and joy in action. Each moment carries the potential for awakening when engaged with deliberate attention and care. Through the integration of the Eightfold Path into modern life, a subtle but profound transformation occurs. The mind becomes less reactive, the heart less burdened, and the body more relaxed. Awareness replaces distraction, intention replaces compulsion, compassion replaces judgment. Life becomes a laboratory for personal growth, a canvas for conscious engagement, and a field for cultivating freedom from habitual suffering. The ordinary, when approached with mindfulness, intention, and ethical action, becomes extraordinary. Living the path is an ongoing journey, not a destination. It requires persistence, reflection, and commitment. Setbacks, challenges, and distractions will arise, but each moment of awareness, each intentional act, and each mindful breath reinforces the path. Over time, patterns of craving, aversion, and delusion loosen their grip, and we discover a stability and clarity that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. By weaving the Eightfold Path into daily life, through mindful commuting, ethical decision-making, conscious communication, and intentional action, we begin to inhabit a life of coherence and purpose. The teachings of the Buddha, though ancient, provide a framework for navigating contemporary challenges with equanimity, wisdom, and compassion. In doing so, we cultivate an inner freedom that allows us to respond to life rather than be controlled by it, to experience joy not as a fleeting moment but as a natural byproduct of mindful, intentional living. In essence, the Eightfold Path in modern times is about alignment, awareness, and intentionality. It transforms ordinary life into a practice field for personal awakening. By engaging with each moment fully, by acting with ethical clarity, and by observing the mind with mindfulness, we cultivate a life of meaning, balance, and peace. In this way, modern challenges are not obstacles but opportunities to live the path in action, to transform suffering into insight, and to experience the profound freedom and contentment that arise when mind, heart, and action are in harmony. Part 10. The Real Purpose of Life: A Call to Freedom. Throughout our journey across the previous 9 sections, we have traversed the landscapes of desire, achievement, distraction, suffering, and mindfulness. We have seen the mirages of happiness, the emptiness behind external success, and the subtle mechanics of craving that keep us running on the hamster wheel of modern life. We have explored the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path, not as abstract doctrines but as living practices that can be applied here and now. And yet, as we arrive at this final section, the question remains: what is the real purpose of life? What lies beyond the transient pleasures, beyond the fleeting successes, beyond the constant chase? The answer, as the Buddha revealed more than 2,000 years ago, is radical in its simplicity. The purpose of life is not to endlessly chase happiness. It is to understand suffering and to transcend it. It is to face the truths of our existence, the impermanence, the uncertainty, the inevitable pain, without being consumed by them. It is to cultivate freedom from the compulsions, attachments, and fears that perpetually drive us. This freedom is not a distant ideal. It is attainable here and now through consistent practice, awareness, and compassionate action. True freedom arises when we recognize that suffering is not something external, something inflicted upon us by circumstances, other people, or events beyond our control. Suffering is amplified by the mind's habitual reactions, the craving for more, the aversion to what is uncomfortable, the clinging to what cannot last. When we cease to be dominated by these mental patterns, when we cultivate clarity and insight, we discover that suffering can be alleviated and even transformed. In this space of freedom, the mind is no longer tossed about by desire, fear, or dissatisfaction. It rests in a profound peace that is not dependent on external conditions, but rooted in the understanding of the way things are. Consider the contrast between the pursuit of happiness as an external goal and the cultivation of freedom from suffering. In the first scenario, we are constantly measuring, evaluating, and striving. Every success is followed by the next goal. Every pleasure is succeeded by a longing for another. Happiness is always just beyond reach, dependent on conditions that are impermanent. In the second scenario, when we focus on understanding and transcending suffering, our actions are guided by clarity and intention, and joy emerges naturally as a byproduct. It is not forced, it is not fleeting, and it is not contingent. The lightness that arises from freedom is enduring. It is the calm sky that contains all weather without being disturbed. In modern life, embracing this path can transform ordinary experiences into opportunities for awakening. A challenging workday, a difficult conversation, an unexpected disappointment. These are not interruptions to our search for happiness, but occasions to cultivate patience, understanding, and equanimity. Through mindful reflection, deliberate action, and compassionate engagement, we begin to see that our lives are not defined by the outcomes we chase, but by the way we navigate them. Each moment becomes a practice in freedom, each decision an expression of intentionality. An essential practice in this journey is self-inquiry. We ask ourselves, what am I clinging to? What desires or attachments cause my suffering? How can I respond differently? By observing our thoughts, emotions, and reactions without judgment, we begin to untangle the patterns that have dominated our lives. We notice the habitual responses of craving, aversion, and fear, and we gradually learn to act with awareness rather than reaction. This process does not happen overnight. It unfolds moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. Yet each small step brings us closer to the freedom that is our birthright. Another powerful practice is compassion, directed both inward and outward. Compassion allows us to soften the grip of self-judgment, to release the constant evaluation that fuels dissatisfaction, and to extend kindness toward ourselves and others. In cultivating compassion, we recognize that all beings experience suffering, and that our well-being is intertwined with theirs. Acts of kindness, generosity, and understanding become not just moral imperatives, but natural expressions of a mind that has glimpsed the possibility of freedom. Happiness and joy arise organically from this engagement, as natural byproducts of a life lived with awareness and care. Gratitude, too, plays a vital role in this transformation. By acknowledging the richness already present in our lives, the simple pleasures, the love of friends and family, the opportunity to be alive, we shift focus from what is lacking to what is abundant. Daily reflection, noting 3 things for which we are grateful and 1 thing we consciously release, cultivates a mind that is anchored in presence rather than clinging. In this practice, the heart becomes lighter, the mind clearer, and the experience of life more vivid. Freedom also involves letting go of the illusion that external achievements can define our worth. No promotion, award, or material possession can provide the stability and peace that arise from liberation. By disentangling self-worth from external validation, we create the conditions for authentic joy, a joy that is steady and resilient even amidst challenges. This perspective reshapes our goals, our priorities, and our daily choices. We begin to measure success not by what we acquire, but by the alignment of our actions with wisdom, compassion, and purpose. The culmination of this path is a profound realization. Life's purpose is not in accumulating experiences, accolades, or pleasures, but in cultivating freedom, the freedom to respond to life with clarity, integrity, and compassion. When we embody this freedom, we find that happiness is no longer a distant goal, but a natural, effortless byproduct. It arises not from the pursuit of external conditions, but from the deep understanding and acceptance of the present moment. The mind that is free from craving, attachment, and fear is like a calm, vast sky. It contains the storms of life without being disturbed, and within it, joy flows naturally. Perhaps the most radical aspect of this realization is that freedom is accessible to everyone in every moment. We do not need to retreat to remote monasteries or abandon our daily responsibilities. Each breath, each action, each choice in our ordinary lives becomes an opportunity to cultivate liberation. Walking to work, engaging in conversations, performing tasks with care and attention, these are not trivial acts. They are the living embodiment of the path. By integrating awareness, ethical conduct, and compassion into every moment, we transform life itself into a practice field for awakening. Imagine standing in your kitchen in the early morning, preparing a cup of coffee. Normally, this routine might pass unnoticed, a mechanical act amidst the busyness of daily life. Yet when approached with awareness, it becomes a practice. You notice the warmth of the cup, the aroma rising into the air, the subtle sensations of taste. Each movement, each breath, each thought is observed with presence. You realize that happiness is not something you have to chase. It is here, in the act of paying attention, in the surrender to the moment, in the conscious engagement with life itself. This realization, applied broadly, reshapes how we live. We engage with our work, relationships, and personal endeavors not with frantic striving or desperate pursuit of validation, but with awareness, intention, and care. Challenges become opportunities for growth. Conflicts become occasions for practicing patience and understanding. Losses become teachers of impermanence and compassion. Freedom from suffering allows us to navigate life with clarity, resilience, and joy, even amidst circumstances that would previously have provoked anxiety, frustration, or despair. In the end, the real purpose of life, the purpose that underlies all external pursuits, is liberation. It is the freedom from the compulsions and fears that drive us, the release from craving and attachment, and the cultivation of a mind that is steady, aware, and compassionate. Happiness is no longer a goal, but a natural companion of this freedom. Joy emerges not from external conditions, but from the internal clarity and peace that arise when we live intentionally, ethically, and mindfully. By choosing this path moment by moment, we wake up from the illusion that something outside ourselves will finally make us whole. We discover that the light we have been searching for has always been within us. Each breath, each action, each choice becomes an expression of liberation. We are no longer defined by our desires or fears. We are free. And in this freedom, we find a happiness that is enduring, profound, and real. Ultimately, embracing life's true purpose means a radical shift in priorities. It is a choice to value wisdom over accumulation, compassion over comfort, and liberation over superficial pleasure. It is a commitment to live with awareness, integrity, and care. It is an invitation to step off the treadmill of endless desire and enter the vast, unbounded sky of freedom. In this space, we discover that life is not something to be endlessly chased, but something to be fully lived, moment by moment, with clarity, presence, and joy. Each day we can ask ourselves, am I feeding the habit of dissatisfaction or the habit of freedom? In this very question lies awakening. By making conscious choices, practicing mindfulness, and letting go of attachment, we fulfill the potential of this precious human life. Happiness becomes no longer the pursuit, but the natural outcome of a life aligned with truth, compassion, and freedom. And in this alignment, we find the deepest joy imaginable, a joy that cannot be taken, cannot be lost, and cannot be fleeting because it arises from the very core of our being. This is the real purpose of life. It is not in wealth, recognition, or fleeting pleasures. It is in freedom, in clarity, in the conscious, compassionate, and mindful living of each moment. And as we embrace this truth, we realize that the path is not a distant journey but a living reality, available to us now, here, in the midst of our everyday lives. Each breath, each kind act, each deliberate choice becomes a step toward liberation. Each moment lived with awareness brings us closer to the ultimate fulfillment that we have been seeking all along. As we bring this exploration to a close, it is worth pausing to take in the full breadth of the journey we have undertaken together. From the earliest stirrings of curiosity about life's meaning, to the unsettling realization that external achievements and fleeting pleasures cannot provide lasting satisfaction, to the profound insights of Siddhartha Gautama and the practical guidance of the Eightfold Path, this story has traced a path from restlessness to clarity, from seeking to understanding, and from illusion to liberation. It is a journey that begins in the human heart, in the quiet questions that rise unbidden in moments of stillness, and unfolds in the ordinary rhythms of daily life, wherever we may be. We began with a question that echoes through every soul. Why are we here? What is the purpose of this fragile, fleeting existence? It is a question that has haunted humans across centuries and cultures, from the emperors and philosophers of ancient civilizations to the artists, scientists, and thinkers of the modern age. We looked at the illusions of society, where happiness is portrayed as a reward for achievement, and where success is equated with fulfillment. We examined the modern myth of happiness, the idea that accumulating wealth, recognition, or experiences can fill the emptiness within. Yet, as we saw in the stories of Newton, Leonardo da Vinci, Steve Jobs, and Michael Jackson, even those who attained the pinnacles of worldly success were left with an unquenchable longing, a subtle but persistent void. This realization, though unsettling, is crucial. It shows us that the human condition is not a problem to be solved by external means alone. The emptiness, dissatisfaction, and restlessness we feel are not the result of a lack of achievement or pleasure, but of a deeper structural reality. The mind is conditioned by craving, attachment, and aversion. We chase pleasure not for its own sake, but as a way to avoid discomfort. We pursue success not for fulfillment, but as a measure of worth. And yet, the more we chase, the further we find ourselves from the peace we desire. The mechanics of desire reveal the pattern of our lives. Like a hamster on a wheel, we run tirelessly, thinking that each new acquisition, each new accomplishment, each new distraction will finally satisfy us. Shopping sprees, binge-watching television, comfort food, social media validation. All are temporary reliefs that mask deeper discomforts but do not address them at their root. Even momentary pleasures quickly fade, leaving us chasing again endlessly without respite. The lesson here is clear. The pursuit of external happiness is insufficient and in many cases counterproductive. True contentment does not come from constantly striving to feel good, but from understanding the nature of desire itself. It was at this turning point that we introduced the path of facing suffering rather than fleeing from it. Siddhartha's decision to leave the palace and confront the realities of aging, illness, and death was not a renunciation of life, but an embrace of its truth. Suffering, or dukkha, is not pessimism. It is an acknowledgement of the impermanent and unpredictable nature of existence. Our suffering arises not only from external circumstances but from the mind's habitual responses, our clinging to what we love, our aversion to what we fear, our resistance to the reality of change. When we stop running, when we stop avoiding discomfort, we allow ourselves to witness the truth of life directly. This act of facing suffering is the first step toward liberation because it allows us to understand its nature, to identify its causes, and to respond rather than react. The Buddha's teachings, distilled in the Four Noble Truths, offer a profound roadmap for this journey. The first truth, the acknowledgement of suffering, opens our eyes to the universality and inevitability of dissatisfaction. The second truth, the identification of craving and attachment as the sources of suffering, illuminates the mechanism by which our minds perpetuate pain. The third truth, the possibility of the cessation of suffering, offers hope, freedom is attainable. And the fourth truth, the Eightfold Path, provides a practical framework for navigating life with wisdom, ethical clarity, and mindful awareness. Together, these truths form a complete guide for understanding the nature of human experience and for cultivating genuine freedom and lasting peace. The Eightfold Path itself is not an abstract ideal but a living practice. Right view and right intention shape our understanding and motivation. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood guide our behavior in alignment with ethical principles. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration cultivate mental clarity, focus, and presence. Applied in daily life, whether in the workplace, at home, during commutes, or in ordinary interactions, these practices transform the mundane into opportunities for awareness and growth. A simple act like mindful commuting on a train or choosing words carefully during a difficult conversation becomes a practice in liberation. By integrating these principles, we cultivate resilience, equanimity, and joy in the midst of life's inevitable challenges. Through these teachings, we also come to a redefinition of happiness. Happiness is no longer a fleeting pleasure to be sought in external circumstances. It becomes a natural byproduct of freedom. Like the sky, it is not dependent on which way the wind blows. It is a state of mind that arises when craving, attachment, and aversion are released. By practicing gratitude and letting go each day, writing down 3 things we appreciate and releasing 1 attachment that no longer serves us, we cultivate a mental landscape that supports this lasting joy. By observing thoughts and emotions with mindfulness, by acting with intention and compassion, by integrating awareness into the ordinary moments of life, we allow joy to emerge naturally. It is no longer a pursuit. It is the natural expression of a mind in freedom. The lessons from this journey are both simple and profound. First, external success and pleasures, while enjoyable, are insufficient for lasting fulfillment. They can provide temporary relief or amusement, but they cannot address the deeper mechanisms of the mind that create dissatisfaction. Second, suffering is universal, and avoidance only perpetuates it. To free ourselves, we must confront it directly, observe it without judgment, and understand its origins. Third, freedom and joy are cultivated through intentional practice, mindfulness, ethical conduct, compassion, and awareness of impermanence. Finally, happiness emerges naturally when the mind is freed from attachment, craving, and habitual restlessness. It is the steady, enduring joy of liberation, distinct from the ephemeral highs of worldly pleasures. Applying these lessons in our own lives requires deliberate action. Begin by observing your patterns of desire and avoidance. Notice the moments when you reach for distraction, when you seek validation from others, when you cling to outcomes or resist change. In those moments, pause, reflect, ask yourself, what am I holding on to? What am I avoiding? How can I respond with clarity and awareness? Introduce small practices like mindful breathing, journaling gratitude and letting go, or acting intentionally in daily tasks. Engage with challenges, relationships, and responsibilities with presence, patience, and compassion. Over time, these consistent, mindful choices reshape the mind and the heart, creating a foundation for enduring freedom and joy. The path is not without difficulty. There will be moments of resistance, setbacks, and doubt. Life will continue to present its challenges, loss, illness, disappointment, and uncertainty. Yet each obstacle is also an opportunity to practice patience, to cultivate resilience, to act with wisdom, and to deepen understanding. The real measure of progress is not perfection, but consistent, mindful engagement with the practices of the path. Each moment lived intentionally is a step toward liberation. Each breath grounded in awareness is an affirmation of the freedom that is always within reach. As you reflect on this story and the teachings within it, consider how they resonate in your own life. How do you experience the illusions of happiness in your daily routines? In what ways do you cling to external validation, material success, or fleeting pleasures? How might you begin to confront suffering directly, to cultivate mindfulness, ethical action, and compassionate awareness in the midst of your ordinary life? What practices could you introduce today? Gratitude, letting go, mindful observation, that would gradually transform the quality of your experience. We invite you to share your reflections. What insights resonated with you most? How do you see these principles applying to your life in practical, tangible ways? Please leave a comment below with your thoughts, experiences, or questions so that we can create a community of shared reflection and support. Your perspective may help others see new dimensions of this journey and inspire collective growth. And finally, if this content has touched you, guided you, or provided clarity, please consider subscribing to our channel, Buddhism in Every Moment. Your support allows us to continue producing meaningful, transformative content that explores the deepest questions of life, mindfulness, and freedom. By subscribing, you help keep this journey alive, ensuring that more people can access guidance, reflection, and insight that empowers them to live more consciously, compassionately, and freely. Remember, the true purpose of life is not found in chasing endless happiness, nor in the accumulation of achievements, pleasures, or recognition. It is found in understanding suffering, cultivating freedom, and allowing authentic joy to arise naturally. Each breath, each action, each mindful choice is an invitation to step off the treadmill of craving and into the vast, open sky of freedom. Life, in all its fleeting beauty and inevitable challenges, becomes an opportunity to awaken, to act with integrity, and to live fully in every moment.